Hey, good morning, everybody. We are live. First off, congratulations. You made it through the week. Another successful work week in the books. And you made it here to be with us on this Friday morning for the Food Safety Chat. My name is Bryan Armentrout, and I'm with the Food Leadership Group. And with me this week is Alicia Swanson. As I had said in the post, auditor and trainer extraordinaire. So hopefully I'm not embarrassing you too much, Alicia.
No.
We have a running game. I haven't had Joe Lano on in quite a while, and I always come up with new titles for him that always embarrass the crap out of him on the chat. So it's always kind of funny doing that. So first off, everybody, we have a tradition here of letting us know in the chat where in the world you are joining us from. I am in beautiful Loveland, Colorado, and Alicia, where are you at?
I am in Portland, Maine, and it's very sunny here, although it is 60 degrees. You would never know it.
So it's always funny, right? The different stereotypes different places around the country have, and the world too, right? So like for Tim in Minneapolis, good morning, Tim. Always good to see him. And Ali in San Diego. Ali, nice to see you. Ryan, good to see you as well. One of the things, Alicia, and we're super glad to have you here, your first time on the chat, is we've got this core group of people who join us and are able to participate in these conversations, and it just makes it so much fun. Robert is here again this week, which is fantastic. And we just have a great time here. And this is, again, if you're new to the chat, this is meant to be interactive. This is not a presentation of us going through a webinar and the PowerPoint slides and things like this. The goal here is to spread food safety information, bring in experts like Alicia to share their knowledge and help broaden that entire base of food safety, because as we say in the chat, food safety is not a point of competition. We're all in this together. And one recall at one company impacts everybody else. The consumers don't care. And we need to make sure that we're elevating that. Good morning, Tom. Megan, good morning as well. So one of the things I had mentioned, I kind of got off topic on that, Alicia, was stereotypes around the country, right? So one of the ones in Maine, right, of course, is kind of that New England accent, you know, kind of the old Pepperidge Farm Remembers commercials. Remember those, like Pepperidge Farm Remembers, right? Those type of things. Do people really talk like that up there? I need to know.
They do. I am not from Maine, so I do not talk like that, but they do. Yes, a little bit. Sorry. It's endearing. It's very endearing.
It is. It is. It's a fantastic one. It's like people always ask me when you're having small talk, is, oh yeah, I'm from Colorado. It's like, oh my God, do you ski? I'm like, I don't ski. Isn't that awful?
No, not at all.
It's like, yeah, people from New York City who've never been to the Statue of Liberty, right? It's, you know, you kind of take it for granted, I guess. But we do get up in the mountains, especially, you know, so it's a great place to live for sure, as Austin in Denver, not too far south, knows as well. So one of the other things that I always do, Alicia, on this chat is I always want to jump into the topic right away, but we're not going to do that. We are going to, everyone, have a ceremonial drink together. So lift up your mug. I love that mushroom mug. And join us on this Friday morning. Cheers.
Cheers.
You got to do that. It's mandatory to do that. Okay. So today, as we were prepping for this call early in the week, I thought this was a fantastic opportunity, especially, Alicia, with all of your experience and everything that you're doing out there in the field, was to kind of really look at what's going on out there. What are you seeing with your clients, your customers? What's going on relative to, food safety? Because sometimes we get lost in the high level stuff. And I know I've been guilty of it. So I was on the SQF Technical Advisory Council, Eurofins with the standards and things like this. And we're always kind of looking at things at this high level. And that's okay. But if you live there, it's not productive because you can't see what's really going on in the real world. You fool yourselves too, because if you don't get out there and start asking questions and things like this, you're never going to know what's going on. And it's also an opportunity then to learn and share and provide information and receive it as well. So I think that's kind of our overall theme here for today, but kind of gets us into our first question here. We kind of get lost in those programs and lose track. So I'm just going to kind of open this up to a broad conversation here of what you're seeing in the real world. And everybody in the comments, please let us know what you're seeing out there too, relative to implementation and how people are doing. So now that we've come out of COVID, Alicia, and everybody's kind of settling back into routines again, FDA is getting out to plants, all these type of things. What are you actually seeing out there?
All right. All kinds of things actually, because it really is based on the area and your facility. Okay, yes, food safety is all the same across the board, but at the same time, it's not always one size fits all.
Yeah.
So depending on large companies versus middle versus small companies, it's a little bit different. But you said it. COVID kind of changed things. I was an auditor before and trainer. COVID hit. I went actually back out into the field myself. So being an auditor, you have these recommendations and you say, okay, this is what the standard says, and this is what you need to do to comply with that. And then, you kind of wonder, how come you're not doing it? Because you follow up on it. It's why aren't you following through with that? So you go back out into the field and then eye-opening, okay, now I see what's going on. And that's what I'm calling now the real world. Went back out into the field, put the boots back on as a FSQA manager, and really just saw things a little bit differently. And COVID being one of the effects, with just loss of staff, right? And then next thing you know, they're pulling people off production lines to be QA techs. And maybe they haven't quite gotten the same training as a seasoned quality technician would have gotten. So we're kind of throwing things at everybody everywhere.
So plants were super short staffed during COVID. Food's got to get made, and people were scrambling, trying to figure out how to do it. They were just happy to have warm bodies. And so is it then kind of a case of production facilities have gotten used to that? It's kind of, okay, well, this is good enough. We had, this crisis we got through. We're kind of okay now, and things seem to be working. And so if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing. Is that kind of?
A little bit. Okay, because the reality is we all cut corners during that time. And then those cut corners turned into habit. All right. And then that we just accepted it. Oh, well, we used to have a budget of 500 and we had to work off of 200. Well, we did it. Yeah. But did you do it effectively and efficiently? Yeah, you did it, but at what cost?
That's a good point. And so management looks at it and says, okay, well, we're getting by, so everything must be fine. And it's kind of that fallacy of you don't see what you're not doing, and it doesn't become a problem until it does. And so it's kind of like preventive maintenance or things like this, right? Okay, yeah, fine. The pump is running right now, but if you don't take care of the grease, and you don't change out the bearings, and you don't check the lobes, and you don't perform that preventive maintenance, it's gonna break at some point.
Oh my gosh, it's you took the words right out of my mouth. I say the exact same thing. We do it with our cars. We get the oil changed so the engine doesn't seize, our tires rotated, all this. So we need to do that in our facilities too. And it's built in. We're supposed to be doing this. Take the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always this battle with quality people. We kind of have this, there's this, quality costs money, right? It's like, we need to reduce that as much as possible. Let's cut the sanitation. These functions that don't produce product type thing. Lots of pressure on that side. It sounds like even more.
Yes, I've seen budget cuts always, and it's always in sanitation, because that's at most places, right? Like I said, everybody's a little different. Most places it happens at nighttime, so you tend to not see it. You kind of forget about it. So sanitation seems to get cut. Pest control seems to get cut. And other areas where maybe not a cut, but you aren't getting support to where you need more people in other areas. Instead of the cutbacks, it's just we're not getting what we need. So that's definitely something that's happening out there. That's a reality.
Yeah, and so something I always used to train my quality managers in is that the unfortunate reality of what we do is that if you're effective at food safety and quality assurance and these type of activities, no one notices because things are working smoothly. And things degrade, and you don't necessarily even notice until it's too late.
Right. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So quality does make money, right? Because people will pay for quality product, but
Uh-huh.
food safety doesn't.
Right.
However, food safety prevents you from losing money. And because we make these cutbacks, are you making cutbacks on your insurance policies? And that's kind of one way of looking at food safety. We're preventing the company real damage and real harm by having these programs and food safety plans in place. So that it's another aspect to think of. Maybe it's not making money, but we're preventing loss of money.
Exactly. And on the money side of things, so Dr. DeFeo from the Duran Institute was on a few episodes ago, and he said something I was like, ooh, I'm going to remember this. He said, quality always gets pushed into that box of, okay, you cost us money. But he says, no one ever asks the finance group about that. It's like, this accounting team, they're really not making us money. We should cut them. Nobody ever says that, right? Because everybody understands how important accounting and finance are to the company to keep everything running. Quality is exactly the same. You have to keep track of
Yes.
these things. And like Megan says here, check the box programs versus effective programs, 100%. I think part of it too, Alicia, I'll get your thoughts around this too, is during COVID, FDA was in the same boat we were. They didn't want to go to manufacturing facilities unless they needed to. And now we're kind of seeing the fallout of that. And I think too, imagine if you're a new quality person and you got, moved into quality during COVID and you've been doing this since that point in time, you haven't experienced FDA. They haven't been to your plant. And you think that, this is all fine. Nobody's looking at this stuff. And I'll just check off these boxes. To Megan's point, who cares? Nobody's looking at this anyway. Well, guess what? If you've seen the graph of FDA's activity and how it's really ramping up and they're getting back out in the field and being aggressive, those guys are in for a big surprise.
Yes, and you know what? You're not always lucky enough to have it scheduled and know when they're coming. So
Yeah.
can you really be audit ready at all times? And I came out of the seafood industry recently, and there are so many audits and inspections. Wow, there's a lot. So we're getting better. We need to get back on track, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've all known or been in this situation ourselves where as a quality manager, you're desperate to get things fixed and nobody's listening on the management team. So during an audit, they'll pull you aside and go, Alicia, it'd be really nice if you noticed this area over here and wrote this up in your report, because they want to get that attention. And that when that happens, that it's a cry for help.
Oh yes, and literally, I'm going in as a consultant now to help aid during audits. Quality managers have just broken down, and they're just overwhelmed. And they have said that even when I was an auditor, they've said that many times. Hey, can you write this up? It's the only way I'll get it fixed.
Yeah.
So working on the other side, you realize now there's so much other stuff that's being dumped and from so many different aspects. And if you work for a large company that's got a corporate office in a different state than they're not sitting there with you. They just say pass the audit. They you may not actually know how to do that, and you're not going to ask for help maybe. So where do you cut corners? And then they see this report that comes over. Oh, you have gaps in your doors. How come you didn't fix the doors? Well, because you told me to cut corners and I couldn't spend the money. So it's a hard balance.
Yeah, I mean, so you have as a quality manager, right? There's this sword that's hanging over your head all the time. You're expected to do all these things with less and less resources. And I think, it gets back to Alicia. What are some of the things that you're seeing out there? What are some of the tips and tricks that quality managers and quality teams and plants are using to raise awareness, to let management know what's going on in the trenches? What are you seeing out there?
Okay, so that is a great question. We those facilities that are GFSI audited have
Uh-huh.
certain requirements, right? One of those requirements is having your monthly meetings to go over your programs and your management meetings. And this is a good opportunity to bring it to the real world and go do your research. There's so much information out on social media. There's kind of no excuse to find stuff, and go pick out the recalls that are in your area or that are in your industry and say, hey, this just happened over here and it was because of a piece of rubber. So how are we doing on our PM programs, right? How do our gears look? So bring it back to real world. You see what I'm saying? I think that's great, because not everybody knows what you know. So share that, right? Get it out there and say, hey, this affected this company. The biggest example, which now it's been some time, but was that whole Chipotle situation, right? They had a horrible food safety. They had these numbers. It affected areas that people on the front line didn't even realize, right? Their shares started off approximately $600 a share. And then they had this food safety scare and it just shut down, right? They lost so much market value, shares plummeted. It took them over 18 months to get back up to where customers trusted them again. And now their shares are like $2,100 a share, right? And now they have loyalty, customer loyalty, to where they're not even affected by inflation, right? Where they just raise their prices and people still go there. So sometimes throwing those kinds of real world situations out really opens everybody's eyes up a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good point. I want to expand on that, Alicia, because one of the things I always warn quality people about is we tend to look at things in the past. We write quality reports for last month's results, and here's our complaint rate, and here's our down, whatever. Okay, that's nice. That's information. Everybody should know that, and they need to know that, but it's not going to help drive improvement. You need to be thinking about things proactively. So as an example, so we're talking about, you should be, as a quality manager, and this is something that I would always push too, your job as the quality manager at a facility is not to be the person running around doing stuff. Your job is to be directing and managing and thinking about stuff. So as an example, as we're talking about this, this kind of kicked in my mind, is, okay, we're talking about these examples of what we're seeing in the real world, which is plants that are struggling, plants that don't necessarily have the right qualifications in areas they need them, because they just have people who are doing these things and they've gotten used to that status quo. And that's going on in your operations. So extrapolate on that. Okay, if this is happening at my production facility, that means that's probably happening at my suppliers as well. So I had better increase my efforts of going out and auditing and talking to suppliers. And if the company is looking at a new supplier, really being careful around that to find out what's going on. That and bringing that information to management is a way to bring awareness. And the theme for our talk today was getting out of the trenches, and being able to kind of look around and see. That's a two-way street. The senior management can't see down where you are in the trenches. Conversely, you can't see where they are either. So you need to bring that information to them. And anytime you're proactive in a type of function like that, you're showing value to the organization. So if you're able to go to management and say, hey, listen, I'm very concerned about our suppliers, especially for these key materials that are very strategic for us, that we can't find anywhere else, et cetera, et cetera. We need to increase our efforts. And in order to do that, I need to increase my resources and my budget. Right? Now you're looking forward and you're creating an action plan on how to protect the company, and you're showing value.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep, it's got a couple of good thanks for the comments here, guys. So so Cheryl said sometimes it's really hard to find a trained, qualified individual to hire for a specific position. Oh, absolutely. And part of that's the challenge in what we do. Most people in food safety and quality assurance, we don't go to school for this. There's some schools that have degrees, but not many. It's not a life course that you plan out. There's not 5-year-old kids going, I want to be a quality manager, right? They want to be a policeman or a fireman or an astronaut or things like this. It's like most things in life, and we all know this as we get older and mature, the path that you think you take when you're younger is completely different than where you end up. And that's fine. That's life. So figuring out internally those key individuals who we want to help and grow, finding those people, and then using outside resources to find those additional resources and key people. Because in what we do is not necessarily sheer labor for it's brain power, right, is what we need. And that sometimes, to Cheryl's point, is really hard to find.
Absolutely. Okay. And those critical thinking skills. And let's be honest, a quality technician or supervisor or manager, it takes something within, okay? Because you're the enforcer of the rules, and you're not the nice guy, and you're not there to make friends. You're there to enforce for safety, and that gets lost. But I always look at, you take a look sometimes on the production line and watch some employees and see who are the ones that are following the GMPs to the T, because you'll find them. There's always diamonds in your facility. You just got to go seek them out. And those are the ones, hey, I noticed that you did very well. You washed your hands for 20 seconds when most people did it for 10, or I noticed you did this very well, and just kind of pick their brains a little bit. And that can be very effective, but you do have to look for something. It's something from within that they have to believe. But
Yeah, I call that the 10-80-10 rule. And the numbers aren't right, but the point is good. And what's interesting is, I'm sure you see this too, Alicia, is if you go into a facility, and let's say that this is a partner or a co-man or things like this, or even one of your plants, and you go and you talk with the guys on the floor, and you say, okay, who are the superstars? They're going to go that person, and that lady over there. And those are the people who hold the glue together. Okay. You can also ask, who are the knuckleheads, right? And everybody knows who the troublemakers are, right? And they'll go, oh my God, that guy right over there, oh, he causes so much grief. Everybody knows that. And so it's part of that 10-80-10 rule, to your point, right? 80% of the people are happy doing what they do. Give them the skills, give them the tools, give them the resources to do their jobs correctly, and they're happy. And that's what we want. We want happy workers. There's 10% at the top who, to your point, we need to identify those, and we need to help them and mentor them and help them grow. Those are the people who challenge. Those are the people who ask questions. Those are the people who want better ways to do things. Those are the people who come to us and say, Alicia, I'm bored. You got anything else for me to do? I'm bored.
Yes.
Right? If you don't, they're going to leave.
Exactly.
And that other end of the spectrum, of course, and it's not 10%, it's probably closer to 1%, depending on the plant. But those are the people who are troublemakers. They don't want to be here. They're using their energy negatively. And if something goes wrong, or they feel slighted, or there's a grudge, or they don't like how somebody's treating them, they're at risk for the facility. And you could have an issue where they could adulterate product to get back at the company, or who knows what. You need to find those people and figure out a way for them to find alternative employment.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And again, by just taking a few minutes and just watching, you'll pick out these people if they don't rat themselves out, kind of.
Oh yeah. They don't hide very well. No, they don't.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I mean, it's kind of the dynamics, because a lot of it depends on where the plant is. If you're dealing with a small mom and pop cheese manufacturing operation in rural Wisconsin, the people who are working in that facility are local, and they've grown up with each other, right? There's lots of history. There's lots of baggage. This person was married to this person, and they divorced, and they married this other person who also works at the plant. And oh my God, all these things that go on. And this is something we talk about on the chat quite a bit, Alicia, is there's the systems and the processes and the things that need to be done to be compliant, but there's also all these people elements, all of these leadership and training and all these activities that impact all of that. And if you don't marry those two things together, you're in trouble.
Yes. Yeah. And that's another thing that is where we all need a little bit of help, is holding our counterparts accountable also when they mess up, because we know all these details and we get lost in the gray. We spend so much time at work now, right? They always say it's our second family, and it's true. You spend a lot of time at work.
Yeah. And part of that, right, is to your point, as you said earlier, Alicia, and this is so important, is that training piece of it. You just can't go to people and say, do this, right? You have to tell them why they need to do this and why it's important. It's like GMPs, to your point earlier, with the hand washing and stuff like this. If they don't understand why they're washing their hands, and you have no background in microbiology, and you look at your hands and you say, this is pretty clean. Well, and you don't understand all the hidden, microbes that are hanging out. Remember the glow gel that you would put on your hands, right? And then you put it in the light and people could see and they go
Still
like,
use
ah,
that in my training. I still have that stuff.
that's so awesome, right? It lets the unseen be seen. It's these hidden assumptions that you need to dig out and eradicate. Another big one, gloves. Oh no, I'm okay. I've got gloves on. I can do anything I want if I have gloves on. No, you can't.
No.
Right? And it's that training piece of it. It's not us being the police and going in there and saying, rah, 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 you need to do, rah, rah, you need to do. Right? As soon as you walk away, everybody's like, whatever, right? And it goes back to the way it was. Building that relationship and getting that training and making sure everybody's aligned starts at that relationship between the supervisor and the operators in any particular area, because the supervisor is the person running the show and you need them on your team.
Yes, absolutely. And back to your point is explaining to adults the why. And sometimes for adults, seeing is believing. So, not just washing your hands, but let me show you why, because this restaurant got written up, because somebody didn't wash their hands. And don't you love that restaurant? That's our favorite pub in town, and bringing it back to the real world. And don't you have kids and this and that? So always explaining that why and making them believe with their own eyes.
Absolutely. Joseph had a good comment here. And this for me is always a giant warning bell, Alicia. Companies act as if it can't happen to them. 100%.
No kidding.
So for me, and I'm glad Joseph brought that up, because for me, if I hear this phrase, it's a giant warning bell for me, right? Well, we've never had a problem before.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. So you're relying on luck.
Yes. You want to take that risk? Who's going to take that? Who's ultimately going to pay for that risk?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like when you listen to financial advisors and things like this who give presentations and things, they'll always throw this caveat in of past results do not indicate future results. Right? Your results may vary. Right? So they're saying, okay, yeah, this is how things could go, but I can't guarantee it. It's the same thing here, right? Just because you were lucky in the past doesn't mean you're going to be lucky in the future. And then it's always amazing when something does happen, they're surprised. It's just like, oh.
Yes, which again, use Google to your advantage. And even if, yes, we're talking about food manufacturing and stuff, but even restaurants, find something that relates to you and bring that awareness and say, that could have been us. Or find a mutual supplier that had a recall or something, say, that could have been our product, and bring it back home. And by the way, this is also a good opportunity. Again, if you are audited, then one of the requirements is mock recalls and trace exercises. Make it a big one, right? Don't do the easy ones with, I know I've got 10 barrels in the warehouse, so I'll just find, there's all my 10 barrels found, 100% complete accountability. Come on, really, scare them a little bit. It's a mock, it's okay. But I mean, hopefully it turns out to just be a mock, but you have the tools, use them to your advantage.
That is a great example, because part of this then is things are constantly changing. And if you're part of my locals group, so locals.com, Bryan Armentrout Food Leadership Group, you can find me there. It's free. I send out information at least twice a week on what's going on in the food industry around recalls and warning letters and guidance documents. You need to keep ahead of the curve. And with that, traceability, right? For forever, Alicia, to your point.
Yeah.
One forward, one back. That's what the standard requires. That's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Enhanced traceability, right? It's coming, right? If you're a high-risk food, the FDA has identified produce, soft cheeses, things like this.
All the good stuff.
Oh, right. All the good stuff. You need to be thinking beyond that box and saying, okay, if we need to have traceability back from the consumer to us and put in the key data and the responsible individuals, 2026 is not very far away. What are we doing to get ready for that? And expanding your training as well. Remember, if you have a crisis situation in your company, the one forward, one back traceability is teeny tiny little part of what you're actually doing during a recall. So who's the crisis coordinator? How are you interacting with FDA? Expand it. There are lots of other organizations within your company that are going to be impacted by the recall. How are they going to react? One of the things that I did in the past is I did mock recall exercises for the company. So I would get with the communication group and we would have a mock recall, and we would do the whole scenario. We would say, okay, we've had consumer reports at this plant for a potential allergen issue. And I would assign different groups then to begin investigating and playing different roles. And we would bring in a media trainer to make sure that people were responding correctly to things. And I would bring in the sales group and the marketing group and the legal group and procurement and everybody. And they would now understand their roles, because one of the things, because unfortunately I've had to manage class 1 recalls in my career. One of the things I learned, and unfortunately you only learn these things through pain, so hopefully I'm able to prevent other people from learning what I've learned, which is if you don't talk to the sales group and the sales group does not understand their role during a recall, they're going to do it on their own. Salespeople do not wait. And if you are a salesperson who's been working in the food industry for 30 years and you have all your industry contacts with Wegmans and Kroger and Walmart and everything else, you've spent all your sweat and tears building those relationships. And it may be with your current company, but it was also with past companies as well. So if you don't work with those salespeople so they understand what's going on during the recall, when that buyer from that company calls the salesperson and says, what's going on? I hear you guys are having a recall. That salesperson is not going to say, I don't know. They're going to make something up. And then you're in a world of hurt, because now you've got back channel communication going on. Absolutely. So think about this, right? This goes back to our analogy again for today, Alicia, which is trench versus up, right? Think in terms of both. How does this impact me at the plant, and how does this impact the company? And then using that information and those outside resources to say, hey, listen, we haven't had a recall, to the early examples with Joseph, but other people in our same space have. Or did you know that? And that starts waking people up and making sure that this goes all the way up to the CEO, because under the Park Doctrine, they are liable for that. So.
Yes. And then how confident are they that it won't happen to them? Do they know what's happening on the front lines? Do they know if their technicians are catching everything, or that sanitation is cleaning with soap and not an empty tank? So if you want to sit there and say, not us, it won't happen to us, how can you ensure that? And how can you be so confident? So go onto the floor, get back out there and make sure, which means back to the training, because they have to know what they're doing.
Yeah. And to your point earlier around insurance, which was a brilliant point, is we all have car insurance. Talk to them on a personal level and say, hey, listen, Sally, get what you're talking about here, but let me ask you a question. Do you have car insurance? Yes. Have you ever had a wreck? Well, no, I haven't. So why do you have car insurance? Well, I've never had a wreck before. I don't need car insurance. It's the unexpected, right? It's that 15-year-old kid behind the wheel who doesn't quite have a good grasp on this yet, who just happens to clip you. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I never had thought this would happen. Well, that's what it's there for.
Yes, absolutely. And your food safety plan is kind of like a will. All right. Mm-hmm. So we all have one. Okay. And we all say we look at it once a year, but do we really? Things have changed. Things can change in a year, and they happen so fast. Are you really capturing everything? Yeah. So, it's kind of like the same thing. It's an insurance plan. Don't mess with it though. Make sure it's in place and take care of it.
And to continue the analogy on the car insurance, things change, and you need to be relooking at your coverage and your policy, and did you have kids in the house and now they're not out, and these things are constantly evolving and changing. And it's the same with your food safety plan. And one of the rules that is very challenging to put in place, so I'll get your opinion on this and see what you see out there as well, is drilling into people's head that the food safety team, which needs to be all of the key individuals in the plant, not the quality team, right? It's quality and management and maintenance and operations and purchasing, everybody needs to be on that food safety team. Nothing changes relative to food safety in that facility until the food safety team approves it. Because we've all been in situations where we walk into a plant, or let's say you're in a facility auditing and you're reviewing the food safety plan and there's new pieces of equipment. It's like, oh, what's this? This is Not on the flow chart. Oh, yeah. They added that a few weeks ago. Who did? Well, the engineering guys. They found a screaming deal on some equipment that was laying in a field. What? Right? The food safety. Then as an auditor, you would say, "Great. I would like to see the food safety review of your plan relative to this new process change." Yeah, we haven't got to the right, trails off. And as an auditor, right, out comes the pen.
Too easy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for you guys, I mean, it's too easy.
Yep, and that's one of the things that I harp on here a lot is one of the things that quality managers do sometimes, which is very deadly, and they never do this, is if I write it, they will do it. Nope. Right? That's to your point, Alicia, fish in a barrel for an auditor. Oh, well, it says here on this procedure that you wrote that you guys have a biweekly meeting for review of the preventive maintenance program. I'd like to see the records for those meetings. Oh, yeah, we were going to start doing that, but yeah, trails off, right?
Well,
a lot of times that's what quality people do is we'll look at a system, and this is a big thing too, right? Is we look at things as a system, but there is no such thing. So if you're a cheese manufacturer, there is no such thing as a cheese making procedure. There are little bits of people who do things to make cheese, but it's a handoff of processes, receiving of milk, receiving of raw materials, producing the curds in the whey, making it into a cheese block, putting in the packaging and ship it out. There's no one person who's doing all of that. There are individuals who are doing that. You need to think in terms of those individuals and what they're doing in the process. If you develop quality systems and look at it at that abstract level, you're going to be in trouble. One of the things that we were talking about as we were preparing for the chat here today is Barb Garfield, who was head of SQFI before he retired, used to say all the time at conferences, and this got burned into my brain, is if you are pursuing SQF certification simply because your customers ask you to and you want to hang the certificate on the wall, don't do it. Right? Big mistake.
Well,
I see the wheels turning. What are you thinking?
Probably too much. But listen, I agree with that. It's easier said than done. But just because you have that certificate on the wall doesn't always mean anything. And those of you who have gotten the 96s and are kind of like, oh, I don't know how I got that 96, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And you really, really need to think maybe about a new career then if you're not going to stand behind what you enforce and practice what you really preach.
Right. Well, it gets back to food safety culture. It's kind of the buzzword of the time right now. And really, food safety culture is something we've been working at on a long time, but now it's got a name. Now it's got, identified. And that's what we're really talking about is are you actually walking the walk? Are you doing what you say you're doing?
Yes. And I just have a quick story and all of that stuff is in my head and my experience are the easy fixes. So I'm walking around this warehouse and they've got a couple of bay doors there and I'm walking around and then I do it again. I loop it again. And I'm like walking around 3 times. And I'm like, anybody's seeing what I'm seeing? And they're concentrating on me walking around 3 times, but nobody's noticing that the doors are wide open. So it's these habitual repetitions, these everyday things that are what catch us up on the silly things. And when you have, when we don't enforce even the CEO coming down with his watch and his fancy shoes, no, you need to take your jewelry off. You need to put the booties on. You need to follow the rules too. This is how we can make sure that culture is within and start it from the very beginning. So we have to change those bad habits of walking by an open door. How can you does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
No, absolutely. And I think part of this too is a lot of times then they'll turn to you and say, oh my God, wow, you're a genius. How did you notice that? Right? It's like, no, it's
How come
just,
you didn't notice it?
well, and part of it's right. It's just human nature. We block out things. Our field of vision, and we've talked about this on here too before, is we think that we're seeing everything in front of us. We don't.
Right.
It's too much information. Our brains, our eyes only focus on little points of information at any given time, and we block things out. So every day we walk by that dock door, and then after a while we don't see it. And then we come in as auditors and consultants and go, what's that? And they're like, oh, right? They just don't see it anymore. And we're pointing out that the emperor has no clothes, and they're not seeing it. Right?
No, but that's the beauty of why we have a multidisciplinary team. Every team member will see something different. So maybe the receiving guys aren't going to see the open door, but somebody from the front office might be like, "Is that door supposed to be open?" Or in a different position. So that's the beauty. We got to use it to our advantage. It's built that way on purpose.
Yes, 100%. So as you're going out and auditing, what and this information is coming out, and people are hopefully getting back to a better state of control in their facilities. What are some of the things then, Alicia, that you're seeing out there that you're writing people up for? What are some of the big categories?
Well, again, I haven't audited in a little bit now, but I've been consulting during audits. What are they getting written up for?
Yeah.
The easy things. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I kind of wanted to pick up on the front lines. It's the auditors are, because look, we get our training too, right? And we're being trained to observe, and the people forget we're there, and they drop it on the floor and pick it right back up. We gotcha. Oh, shouldn't say that word, but that's the truth. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just it's those little things is what's happening. They're getting better at, I'm seeing facilities much better at their CAPA plans, the corrective action, preventive action, they're writing them up better. That being said, the follow through and the accountability part could always be better. Thermometer calibrations took it out of service. Okay. For a couple weeks now, where's the replacement? Right. Forget about that kind of stuff.
Well, and then too, right, is okay, great. The thermometer wasn't working correctly. What measurements were taken that thermometer did while it was in service and you didn't know it was failing?
Yes. All this stuff counts. And these are the little things that, these are the little things that they're getting written up for.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of goes back to, it's like John Wooden, the famous basketball coach at UCLA. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and all these famous players that he coached, world-class athletes. And they would start practice and he'd be like, this is a basketball. And then they would do passes and they would do free throws, right? The basics. You need to always remember to focus on the basics. We're not above that, right? You always have to come back. And it's always good to kind of think about that as a pyramid. It all fails at those top levels if you're not doing the basic stuff right. Going on the car analogy again, too. You see cars going down the road that are dented and haven't been washed in God knows how long, and the paint is falling off and the tires are bald. Okay, it may not break down today, but it's going to break down pretty soon, right? And it's never going to be at a convenient time. So do the upfront work, do the PM, do the cleaning, right? And what's always kind of weird in those situations, and maybe I'm a little off topic here, but a lot of times the people driving the car match the car, right? They look as disheveled as their car. And it's kind of like,
or the opposite, just as clean.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've always kind of taken a look at that and kind of made those correlations. I don't know if it's right or not, but I have.
That's very true.
Isn't that funny? So Ardell here made a good comment. So diversity and training are key to identifying blind spots in our food safety. Yeah, absolutely. It's those new perspectives. It's fresh eyes. We're not smarter. We just come in and look at things from a different perspective. And when you're in the trenches every day, fighting to get the product out the door, trying to get things done correctly, just hoping to make it home that night, it's easy to lose track of the big picture.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So that blocking and tackling piece of it, right, guys? If we're going to have food safety culture, we need to take that John Wooden example and apply it to what we do, right? This is hand washing. This is how we wash hands. Okay, everybody, let's wash hands. Right?
Yep.
Don't go, we all know this. No, you don't, right? Let's go back and do it again. Okay? We don't have to be fancy. Right? Sometimes that's 80% of the battle right there. And so I think that's a really good thing to emphasize today for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Back to the basics and get and take time on the floor and see what's going out there, because they're the ones that know what's going on.
Yep. So I think I'm getting a good sense of this, but I still want to ask the question. And it's always such a fun question to ask. So it's kind of the magic wand question, right? So as you're kind of looking at the food safety, the food manufacturing industry with all of your perspective and expertise, if you could wave a magic wand, Alicia, what would you change? What would be different out there?
I sound like a broken record, but it's the habits. I would change the bad habits to good habits so that we're all cautious of, hey, close that door, or hey, wash your hands for 20 seconds. I all the good habits, your hair sticking out, there's like no hair coming out of the hairnet, just that all of that stuff becomes second nature. That would be my wish.
Yeah, so those become, and this basketball analogy is working well. So it becomes those automatic habits. If I'm always amazed, I'm a terrible golfer, and I'm always amazed when you see somebody on the driving range and they just hit perfect shot after perfect shot, and you go, how do you do that? And they're like, well, what do you mean? You just hit the ball. Or worse, they try and give you advice. It's like, oh no, loosen your grip, turn your thumb this way, lean forward more. Uh, do this during your backswing, right? And you're trying to remember all these type of things manually. It never works, right? All you end up doing is getting frustrated. You need to get that to a position where it becomes muscle memory, where those habits just become automatic. So when you put the gloves on, you know to wash the gloves and sanitize the gloves, and you don't even think about it. If you touch your face, you automatically take the gloves off and put on new gloves and go through that procedure. Part of this is always getting to the why. And again, this is the interaction between systems and people, right? The systems are nice, but the people are more important. GMPs are written, but how are they implemented? And the why is important. It's like, okay, well, why do we wear the hairnet? Is it because it's this fantastic fashion statement? No, it's because we want to keep the hair out of the product. The goal of the GMPs is to keep stuff out of the product that shouldn't be there. So that's the overall writing factor. And so what you need to teach people is not necessarily to memorize the GMPs, but it's like, we always need to remember, guys, that we need to keep foreign material out of our product. Foreign material is always in the top 3 for recalls. That means hair and, as you were talking about earlier, rubber gaskets or tools or whatever. We need to be constantly on the lookout for those things. So when the CEO shows up with the rings on his fingers and the watch, those are things that can fall in the product. And it's getting that drilled into people's heads so it becomes automatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like what Steve said here. If you don't schedule PM for your equipment, it's going to schedule it for you.
Oh, that's good. Yes, yes, yes.
That is gold. I love that.
Very
Yeah, and that's a good point too. And we'll kind of expand on that a little bit too, is problems always happen at the worst time. And I remember at a previous company, we had a crisis, and it was right during the middle of the busy season. I was talking with my boss, the CEO of the company, and he's like, oh, Bryan, why is this happening now? And he's thinking out loud. He's like, oh, we have all these orders and this new thing going on with this customer, and we've got the Christmas promotion. And why is this happening now? And I turned to him and I said, of course it's happening now. It's happening now because this is when we cut corners. This is when sanitation doesn't have time. This is when the production staff is working overtime to get the orders out the door. This is when quality is stressed. Of course it's happening now. And I saw this light bulb go off in his head, right? And he got it. He understood at that point in time. And it made my life a little easier after that.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So even, okay, let's go back to COVID for a minute, where some factories were pushing out extra. The bread factories, right? They were doing double time. Okay, well, you had a PM schedule for your normal production line Monday through Friday. Did you adjust your PM schedule because now you're pushing your equipment to do Saturday through Sunday, and now you've got second shift and possibly into third shift. Now you're cutting into sanitation that used to have 6 hours down to 4, and oh, but you can do it in 3. And next thing you know, again, they wonder why things are breaking down. You adjust your production, but you didn't adjust anything else.
Yep. And management doesn't understand because they think if sanitation used to be done in 8 hours and we're now doing it in 5 hours, that, oh, okay, well, 5 hours must be working. They were just goofing around those other 3 hours.
Right.
No.
No.
Well, and part of what companies learned during COVID as well is, I think as consumers, we saw this too, is just in time is nice in theory, but it broke down really fast. And if you have production equipment, let's say from a European manufacturer, and you had very low parts inventory because you want to lower your carrying capital, and all of a sudden those heater seals that you need for the packaging machine made in Germany, you can't get here. They have no idea, right? They're completely out of stock because their plants were shut down too. And now you're in a world of hurt.
Right. Yes. We've seen it all. And by the way, did you know, in your supplier program, you're supposed to have backup suppliers. When did you learn that maybe your backup supplier maybe needed a backup, right? Until it was too late. Like, oh, we're out of sugar or whatever.
Well, a lot of companies, and so some of my clients learned this during COVID, is, and because of the Ukraine war, where does sunflower oil come from?
Yes.
Now all of a sudden, companies that have sunflower oil in their formulations can't find any.
No.
And now you're into food fraud. So now food fraudsters see this and go, ooh, I can make a lot of money selling whatever as sunflower oil.
No, you give me the chills now. No.
Yeah, it gets back to my earlier comment around the procurement side of things. If you're having problems, it means your suppliers are having problems.
Yeah.
You need to double your efforts in those areas, not cut back. Exactly. So kind of as we're kind of getting to the closure of our conversation here today. So I think, we see this quite a bit, Alicia, in what we do, is things come and go. So GMA safe, right? That goes way back. I'm dating myself. That was going to be the new gold standard for auditing. And then that went away. And then GFSI came about, and now we're going through all this, and now food safety culture. And a lot of times what companies will say, or people will say, is, okay, we just got to kind of get through this, and it's a fad, and we'll move on to the next fad after that. We just have to kind of keep our heads down and work through it. Do you think this whole, all these conversations around food safety culture, do you think this is a fad, or is this something that's going to stay?
No, I absolutely do not think it is a fad. Okay, so it's a real risk. Okay, the baby formula thing that we're just dealing with for many different reasons. One being food safety risks with the bacteria, and it needs to be taken seriously, and it's not going anywhere. And you and I were talking last week and mentioned, how AI might be coming into play and perhaps some robots. Great. Okay, but you're never going to get rid of that human factor of that knowledge and just being able to catch things in that crystal ball sort of preventing, hey, we need to clean our ceilings because if we don't, stuff's going to fall down. So yeah, it's not just a fad.
Good. Well, I agree. And I think that it's personification in the standards of what we've been talking about, which is the people side of things. Really, so what food safety culture is trying to say is food safety people. You need to have everybody involved with this. And I see this time and time again. This is the greatest failure and why quality managers, food safety managers crash and burn, is they try and take it all on their shoulders, and they think that they can, through sheer will, make their facility compliant, and it never works. You have to have this team on board.
You do. And it's okay to ask for help, right? That was something that we all have to learn at wherever we are in our career. When your plate is full, just say, hey, I'm full. I need some help. And
Yeah.
communicate, right? That's where we can also help ourselves get out of that hole and that overwhelming feeling is by communicating, I need help, or communicating whatever it is.
Right. And it gets you out of your silo. A lot of times, technical people are comfortable in that silo
Absolutely.
and not talking with people outside of it. And to your point earlier, Alicia, you made this and it's absolutely correct and brilliant. And I want to make sure to emphasize this as we're closing out here today, which is a key part of what we do. And guess what? We're doing it right now. A key part of what we do is education. Right?
Yeah.
That information that we know and all this stuff around food safety and bacteria and environmental monitoring and enhanced traceability, all of these type of things, present, past, and future that we have learned, it doesn't do the organization any good if you keep it all bottled up. You need to talk with these other groups and teach procurement on why these things are important and work with upper management. Oh my goodness, right? You have to manage up in these areas. And it's something that as I've evolved in my career over time, it's become clearer and clearer to me just how important the people side is versus the system sides. You have to be able to execute. If you just write stuff down and you think that people are going to do it, oh no, don't do that.
Yeah, and part of that execution is knowing your resources. And it's perfectly okay to reach out to an external resource. We don't all know everything. And there's a lot just in food safety, and then add quality, and then food defense, and then all the other little regulations and customer requirements and stuff. It's a lot. So, reach out. And that's where, someone like we can come into play, your consultants and those that have lived it and can really give you some good guidance on here's what's going to work best for you to get through this.
Right. And that's a good point. And I think it's a really good way to kind of circle back on this too, is I've seen and done enough in my career and I've screwed up a lot of stuff. Right. And I know what doesn't work. And that's just as important as what does work. And I want to share that knowledge. And we all do. And we want to work together to help other people. So if I can help, and I think that's part of the reason why we do this chat as well. If I can help people who are younger in their career, right, in their 20s and their 30s, and they're starting to develop and doing these type of activities, which are so important. If I can help them avoid some of the landmines that I stepped on, great, right? There's no reason you have to do that too. Learn from that painful experience of others, and that's where we come in.
Yes, it's paying it forward, giving it back. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Some still will, and that's okay. But this next generation is a different generation, and they're learning quite
Yeah,
quickly from our mistakes.
yeah, and that's what's kind of cool about what we do is that we all eat. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we are the producer and we're also the customer in this in many aspects. And as we talk about here quite a bit, we pick up our beverages, we eat our lunches and our breakfasts, and we don't give it a second thought.
Mhm.
And that trust is so easily lost. And when it goes away, man, is that hard. I mean, to your Chipotle example earlier. And I think, Carrie Bridges and her team over there at Chipotle have been doing a fantastic job of bringing that company back. And that's tough, right? That's really, really tough. And if you're in a restaurant environment like that and things like that, supplier management, oh, wow.
Mhm.
That you live or die by that. So that person who's delivering that romaine lettuce to your facilities, you need to have a clear grasp of that. You need to understand in that education piece. So kudos to Chipotle for what they've been doing. So not an easy task for sure. Don't
No.
get in that position.
Exactly. Prevent it from happening. It is preventable.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, we're just about at time. So, Alicia, anything else? Any other closing thoughts or things you would like to share with everyone on the chat today?
No, other than just keep, when you have a few minutes to yourself, just Google some stuff. It's Be careful of the rabbit holes, but just go educate yourself more and more. There's so much information out there. And again, you can't learn it all, but go pick out some stuff, and just keep educating yourself and your team and your knowledge, and then call for help if you need help too.
Yep. And so back again to the locals group. So I put the link in here for the locals group. It's free. And I send out information on recalls and other type of stuff, right? So you don't have to, right? I spend my time doing that for you to help share that information. So I think sometimes, and that's why I think this chat was so fantastic, Alicia, and you've done a great job on here, is we got to get back to sometimes those basics, right? This is the basketball. This is the target that we're trying to get to. And making sure that the blocking and tackling is in place before you take on the bigger stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Back to the basics.
Absolutely. So everybody, hopefully we've given you some good stuff to think about here today. And thank you, Alicia, first time guest on the chat. Fantastic information. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. And can I just give a shout out to my girl, Sanal, for introducing us, Bryan. She hooked me up with you. So thanks, Sanal.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I like her a lot. So thanks, everybody. We do this show for you. And as usual, fantastic feedback, fantastic comments here, guys. Thank you. We're all in this together. We're all working on food safety as one big team. So your participation in here is why we're here. So thank you again for that. So with that, we're going to bring this chat to a close. The weekend's almost here. Congratulations. I hope you have fun out there, have a little bit of laughs, have a little bit of fun. Kind of dreary here in Colorado, which is weird, but that always turns around. So we'll join everybody back here next week for the next food safety chat. Same time on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter at 10 a.m. Eastern time, where Alicia's at, 8 a.m. Mountain time, where I am. And we'll be back here next Friday for the next chat. So have fun, everybody, and we'll see you back here next week. Thank you, Alicia, and have a good one, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.